cool tools. Thank you for coming out. I am really delighted that there are that many people who are interested in talking about tools and whether they're cool or not. And I hope to talk a little bit about that. And what I really want to do is talk about the process of how the book came to be. It's self-published. Maybe some talk about how that came to be. The way we're going to structure this is I'll talk for 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes, and then we're going to take some question and answers that I think Xander's going to moderate, and for maybe about the same amount of time, and then the rest of it we hope to have an opportunity, if you have a tool that you are enamored by, you wanted to share with us, we're going to have an opportunity to do that. And then we have some books that I've signed, tool books that you're going to, for those who have tickets for that part, are going to get that. And I'd be happy to describe any of those that you want. I think that's the general drift of the evening. And I'm here mostly to share my enthusiasm for recommending really cool stuff. So I want to take a little bit of a kind of a historical view, both somewhat my own background and some of the trajectory of publishing and how we got here. But I was kind of provoked to ask one question before I began, just to help me get a sense of who's here. How many people here have never seen a Whole Earth catalog? You haven't seen a Whole Earth catalog before. You don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, good. All right. So we'll get to that. So that's about 40%. And let me. I have some slides, and that title is the subtitle of this book. This is the Whole Earth catalog. For those who haven't seen it. It says access to tools, and that's sort of what I'm preaching here. This is the moral of the story, which is increasing access to tools. And I want to begin a little bit where I came from. So as a kid, I was a maker. I made stuff, and I think when I was 10, I found this book in the library called The Golden Guide to Chemistry. And it told you how to make stuff with household chemicals, and this is instructions. It's not high res. This is instructions how to make chlorine gas, sand flush, and bleach. Okay, you will generate clouds of chlorine gas. So you can imagine that book is hard to find. Not in the public library anymore, because it really still does work. And so you can produce chlorine gas, and it tells you how to do it, and it's like, yeah, sure. So I did that. So I built a whole, with the glassware, the Bunsen burners, and everything, and I had a lot of chemicals, and I had a neighbor across the street who worked at Merck, and I gave him lists of chemicals that I wanted, that I could buy as a kid. And I was 10. I actually had the only basic chemistry lab in the country, and I didn't make a bomb. I was the only kid with a chemistry lab not making bombs. I never made gunpowder or anything, even though I knew how to. I just thought, that's not a good idea. So I made a chemistry lab, and then when I was 12, I discovered another book in the library. It was called How to Make a Home Nature Museum. And that's the book. I later went to Amazon and bought my own copy of it as an adult. And it was really cool because I told you how to do, to catch butterflies and mount them, and here's instructions for making a caterpillar mount. But notice the thing here is you roll the pencil over and then you blow hot air up its butthole. How could you not like a book like that? Right? It's like, whoa. So, but again, this was a book. I was 12 at that point, and I never could decide whether this was a book for adults or for kids, because here's just, if you notice up here, in the upper right, above the right hand. It's like, yeah, you need some arsenic here for your taxidermy. So, yeah, okay. So I don't know where they expect 12-year-old kids to get arsenic from, but again, this is in the 50s, early 60s, and so that's sort of the state of science for kids. But so I built a nature museum in my basement. I had all kinds of exhibits showing how wings worked and how rivers meandered and how rocks could glow in fluorescent light and stuff like that, and a lot of biological amounts. So I was kind of making stuff even as a kid, and this was a clock that I copied from Dali, a very famous Salvador Dali clock that I painted in the corner of my room. But my painting, one of the clocks worked. It was actually a working clock. Whoa. And it's actually that way. It tells you almost 11 o'clock. And so it's still going. That's when my brother went to visit the house we used to live in 40 years later, and they didn't paint over it, they kept it. I went through the back, and I had a mechanism in the back, so I have a working Dali clock. And I went to basically I skipped college and went to travel in Asia and had a backpack, and I was recording, it was on the Appalachian Trail in this case here, but I was recording the vanishing landscapes and the peoples and the traditions of Asia. That's me in the Himalayas and the Kashmir. And I was doing it with very little money and lots of time, which is the best way to travel. And if you're going to do it, if you want to have either a lot of money or a lot of time, it's much better to have a lot of time. And that's me in Taiwan in 1972. I had hair. But I was using analog film. These are some of the cameras I had to capture raw, unprocessed, what we call slides, images. And I continued to make stuff, and so I took those images and I used the new technology of Quark and Photoshop to produce a book that Taschen published. So I did this whole thing myself, a do-it-yourself version. And I did this book in a way that when I was much older, I came back, that allowed me as a nobody. I was a nobody photographer. I could finish a whole book, I could design a whole book using these tools and give it to Taschen, and they said, yes, well, we printed it. And in the past, it would have cost $400,000 or $500,000 to produce a book like this, if you had to do all the separations and pay professionals to design it and lay it out, and the whole thing. And I did it with my little Mac, and that allowed me as a nobody to do a photo book that Taschen published, because for them it was cheap. I did the production work using technology. So I did the work using technology of maybe 4 or 5 other professionals. Even at that time, Taschen was still employing people like that. So technology has allowed us to, as individuals, it's amplified our power to do things, to make things, and to make things happen. And so I began really to be, even as a kid, as I tried to make things, I was really interested in finding tools that would allow me as a poor individual to do things. I, at one point, had a lot of beehives, and I made all those hives and made the interior parts of the hives. If you keep bees, that's really crazy. It's really crazy to do, but I had free wood, so I had a lot of time, so I was actually making all the interior frames as well. And I eventually built a house up in upstate New York, and the other crazy thing is that's a cedar shake roof. Each of those shakes is nailed on individually. That's also a really stupid way to do things. But if you have a lot of time and no money, that's another way of doing things. And this is the interior. I cut down those trees, the oak trees to make the beams. It was a craft. It was a handmade thing. I rode my bicycle across the U.S. and then I worked in a lab in the university making a film about digestion, which is where I was trying out to see if I really wanted to be a scientist, and I discovered that I was a terrible scientist. I didn't have the patience to do that experiment over and over and over again. So I started writing about how scientists found out and got information, and I found that much more interesting. And that was the first article I wrote, which was for a magazine published by the Whole Earth Catalog, which was called Information as a Communicable Disease, because I found out that the information was traveling through science as if it was a disease. It was a kind of a biological metaphor. I still have my little museum in my house today, but what I'm interested in all along the way was tools that would allow me as an individual to kind of do these things. And I think tools are often underrated as instruments of change and revolution. I like the quote of Freeman Dyson, one of the physicists who worked on the Manhattan Project, who really saw science, the history of science, as a series of tool inventions. And tools would come along, and they were really much more important in changing things than some of the discoveries of tools. Tools are kind of the meta level. This is an example of something that's in the Cool Tools book. This is a lathe that was made from junk that was melted down and cast, and this is actually a drill press. But the idea is that this guy Gingery would bootstrap a workshop by making a little lathe and using the lathe to make other parts like the drill press. So you make one tool, and that tool would then allow you to make another tool, and those two tools allow you to make the third tool, and you could start with melting metal in your backyard and end up with a complete workshop. So that's this idea of bootstrapping.